Welcome to Masechtas Kiddushin. Today we're learning Daf Pei Aleph. We're going to begin on the bottom of Pei Amud Beis, about 7 lines from the bottom. Aval Isha Achas, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav. So this goes back to our Mishnah regarding the dinim of Yichud, whether or not a man is allowed to be with 2 women. So the Tanakhama say no. Rav Shimon says, Af ish echad misyachadim shtei nashim. Rav Shimon says that a man can be with 2 women. So on this, again, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Lo shanu, the only time that we say this din is el b'ksherim. Possibly that we will allow any element of yichud is if the men are ksherim. Of a beprutzim nefilu be'asara namiloi. So if we're dealing with men who are prutzim, so it's not going to even make any difference even if there's 10 of them. It's still going to be an issue of yichud. And there's actually a story that they took out 10 men took this woman out literally on a mita, on a bed. Says Rashi, b'cheska shehi mesa, giving the impression that she had died. But kilkulu ima v'eshes. She was actually a married woman, and they all defiled her. So it doesn't make any difference, even if it's a lot of people. If they are corrupt people, then the din is the same. Then it's usher. We cannot trust them. Rav Yosef, Teidan, I'll prove this to you. That you have 10 people, they gather together, Viganve kashura, and they'll steal a beam, and they're not embarrassed from one another, even though they all know they're committing a crime. But since they are such lowly people, so they don't even think about it. It doesn't bother them. So it's the same thing with Arias. Name him a Sayale. So maybe this is a proof. It says, it says that when the man goes with a group of people to go to the Beis HaMikdash, because his wife was considered as a sota, so they have to go with 2 Talmidei Chachamim. Talmidei Chachamim in Sheba the Amaloi. Says Rashi, Marshal based in Mishakini Ishto V'Nistera, V'hu Malel Hashkaisa. So she's again supposed to go to the Beis HaMikdash to drink the Meisaita. Marsala based in Shibeiro Shnei Talmidei Chachamim. So that city will appoint 2 Talmidei Chachamim to go. Shema Yavu Leha B'derech, because it's possible that the husband will have been with his wife while they're traveling. Shahari Nesra Olav, she is usher to him, as it says, Nitma Echad L'Baal V'Echad L'Boil. Obviously, she's usher to the boil. She was always usher because she was an Eishes Ish. But even to her own husband. However, if he would have been with her, then the water is not effective. As the Gemara there also says in Sota, it's only bizman she ishma nukami avoin hamayin boit kines ishtoi. Ein ishma nukami avon ein hamayin boit kines ishto. So if we're going to go through this whole procedure, which includes having Hashem's name erased, we don't want to do that if we know that it's not going to work. So if we have 2 Talmidei Chachamim, to make sure that they did not have tashmish. Now, why 2 Talmidei Chachamim? It must be because they're ksherim, which is mashman anyone else we don't want, because that still wouldn't be effective. Grace says no. That's not the reason. Rather, Shani Talmidei Chachamim, the Yadeh, as we continue to pay him at all, the Talmidei Chachamim are different because they know Lastruye Bey. They know how to give Hasra, basically, again, that they will be able to instruct him that if you have been with your wife, then the Mayim, the Mesotu, will not be effective. So you needed Talmidei Chachamim, people who are scholarly, who knew the laws, to be able to inform them that that's the din. But if it wasn't for that, you would maybe not need Talmidei Chachamim. So it's not necessarily a raya. Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Lo shanu, the only time we say, says Rashi, Isha misyachedes im shnei anashim, that a woman can be 2 men, is El Be'ir, in the city. with a lot of people. If you're on the road, ad shiu shloisha. 3. Why? That if there's only 2 men and one of them needs to use the bathroom to relieve himself, and he's not going to do it in front of them, so he walks away, so all of a sudden she's alone. So therefore we require 3 men to be with her, so that would be okay, because then we're going to say that 3 ksherim is not going to be an issue. Because even if one of them leaves, there'll still be 2 ksherim, and therefore it's not an issue of yichud. Ne'emasayle. So let's say this vayter is approved. Trey ve'ihu hatlasa. You have 2 and the husband. Because why do you need 2? Just have 1. It must be 2 is enough. And you need 3 taka, right? You need 3 because 1 may leave. The only reason why we have a second guy is for them to give edus, to give testimony if anything happens. And again, also for the hasra to be a good hasra. Rav Rabbi Yehuda havi kazburcha. So Rav and Yehuda were on the road. Havi kazla he isasa kamayu. And there was a woman that was in front of them. Normally Rav Rabbi Yehuda dal karech mikmei gehinum. Pick up your feet in front of Gehenna, which he wasn't speaking disrespectfully toward this woman, but he's basically saying that by staring at a woman, if your mind is not in the right place, unfortunately, you can have hirhorim royim, and therefore it's better that you shouldn't put yourself in that position. What do you mean? We're ksherim, we're good people, what are you worried about? So Armalei said, when it says ksherim, who says it's like me and you? Maybe it's someone on the caliber of Rav Chanina bar Papi and his friends, Rashi's Rabbi Tzaddik, Rav Kahana, as we saw in the beginning of the end of the first parak. So it's a very interesting thing about you shouldn't have faith in yourself that, oh, I'm a big tzaddik, because that's probably the Yitzhahara saying, don't worry, put yourself in a position, and then when you're in that position, you never know what's going to happen. So therefore, even the great Rav and Rabbi Yehuda question whether or not they fall into the category of ksherim. Omer Rav, Malkin al Yichud ve'in Oisrin al Yichud. We'll give Malchus on Yichud, which is Malchus Mardus, but we're not going to aser a married woman on her husband just because of Yichud. Ve'in Oisrin al Yichud, Malkin al Yichud ve'in Oisrin al Yichud. So Rav Ashi, Lo Amaron. The only time we say that we give Malchus, it'll be Yichud Penuya, is if you were alone with a non-married woman. However, if you were the married woman, not. So why not? You could still have tashmish with a married woman, but there's an additional problem. The problem is we give Malchus, people are not going to just think you had the Yichud, they're going to think something worse happened. And therefore they're going to start questioning this woman's children, if in fact they're this man's children, her husband's children. And therefore, to alleviate the issue of suspicion, so therefore we don't give Malchus in that case. Mar Zutru Malki Umachris. Mar Zutru Taki would give Malchus on the Yichud of an Eshasish, but he would announce to everyone, it's not that they had Znus, but that just that they had Yichud. Amalei Rav Nachman mi Par Hatayo Rav Ashi. So he said, Mar Nami Loki Lachris. So why don't you do the same thing? Right? Apparently, just as long as you announce it, why you're giving Malchus, that should be sufficient. Amalei Ikudish Shama Bahavlu Shama Baha. We see this all the time, that we have selective hearing, right? You'll hear one thing, you're not going to hear the other part. So you're just going to know, oh, wow, did you hear what happened? And then you're not going to know the whole truth. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't delve into all the truth. And therefore, these false rumors can cause problems. Amar Rab Malkin al Loitaiva Hashemua. A person can get Malchus again on something Lotova Hashemua. What does that mean? It says Rashi, Mishaita Koyolo. If let's say, says Rashi, that there's a rumor about you, that you are a known sinner, Malkanaiso. So we're going to give you Malchus Deloy Toiva Hashmua Lavhu, because this notion of hearing something bad about someone is a lav. Dechsev bivnei Eli, regarding the children of Eli, it says, Al banai lav yesh kan al lo toiva hashemua. When it came to Eli's children, so we know that they were chayshid for being mavazik kachim and also being inappropriate with women, married women. Exactly what that means, the Gemara talks about. But as the pasuk shnemer al banai ki lo tova shmua, it's not good what I heard about you, and therefore you can even give malchus for these types of rumors. Mar Zutra moisef la afsera al kasve, so he would put a strap on his shoulders. Umakrile al banai, and he used to say al banai, which basically, again, he would read this pasuk to let people know it was on this lav is the reason why Malchus is taking place. Omarabba. It's a very famous sugya. Bala be'ir in chayshish mishim yichud. If the husband is in the same city as you, so we're not going to be in chayshish of yichud, because the husband could come at any point, and therefore we're not concerned of being alone. It says Taisus, perish b'kuntris in chayshish lahalkais mitaych perusho ha'yisurim ya'ika. So we're not going to maybe give malchus, but it's still usher. It says Taisus on the bottom, in Lafarish, in chayshish and klal mishim yichud v'fil yisur leika. So the question is it still an isser or not? So Machlokes Rashi Taisus. Rabbi Yosef, Pesach Pasuach Rosh Hashanah Mechayshim Mishim Yichud. This is what some people do. They keep the door open, the front door wide open. So then, apparently, that'll be enough of a deterrent of Yichud. Therefore, it won't be an issue of Yichud. Rabbi Iklo Lebei Rabbi Yosef. So Rabbi went to the house of Rabbi Yosef. Basar the Karach Rift, after he bread, Armlahu, he said to him, Shakuli Dargam Tute Bibi. Rabbi said, take the ladder and put it away. So basically he was saying, I'm on the top floor and I'll sleep up in your attic, but I don't want access to go downstairs to your main floor because your wife is there. So he's like, but I'm in the same house. Like, what are you afraid? There's no issue of yichud. No shani Rabbi tishoish vinte havoy, because he was, says Rashi, balas brisloi, he was like very close. The gaisabe, because of that, there was a lot of the barriers and boundaries were removed between him and this man's wife. And therefore, he felt that extra precautions were necessary. Omer Rav Kahana, Anashim mibachutz, Anashim mibifnim, ein chayshim mishim yichud. If the men are on the outside, the women are on the inside, we're not concerned of yichud. Says Rashi, bebayas achitzayin. So if you have two houses, and the only way to get from the inside, you have to go through the outside. So he says that the men are on the outside, we're not chayshish that the men are going to end up going inside. That's not going to be a concern. Or if the men are in the inside and the women on the outside, then we are chayish. It's learned on the opposite way, that it's also the other way around. We go strict. It doesn't matter if the women are on the inside or on the outside. It doesn't make any difference. We're always going to say it's an issue yichud. Abaye Dayer Gulfe. He had Rashi's barrels, mokum kvutzas anoshim, where there's a lot of anoshim, where the men and women are together. Oh, lidrasho chuppah haymasadir kankanim shelcheres. He would have these like jugs or barrels of earthenware, harbi binehem, between them. Shim yavuz eitzel zeh nikashkashav yishmakoil. So if anyone gets too close, then they're going to bang into these things, they're going to make noise, and therefore people are going to stay away. Rava Dyer Kaneh. So he used to have Dyer, actually says Shuro Shurais, rows of reeds. So the same idea. Omar Ovin Sakba Deshata Rigla. Says Rashi, what does that mean? Riyua Shalimos Shana. The most dangerous times, as far as Yichud is concerned, of the year, and Avera is Yemoisa Regel. During the Regolim, Sheish Kavutzas Anashim Anashim Lishmo Drasha, men and women are coming together to listen to Divrei Torah even, but they're coming together. V'noisim Zem Zeh. So because they're constantly together during this time, that's when there's greater potential issues. Hanach Shavayasa Da Soil Narda. So there was these captives that went to Narda. Askinhu Lebe Rav Amram Chasida. So they brought them to Rav Amram Chasida. Ishkulu Darga Mikamayhu. Similar thing. He commanded that the ladder should be removed. Bahadi de Kachalfa Chadiminaihu Nafal Nahira Be'ipuma. That as he was walking by, he happened to glance in his peripheral vision one of these women, and the beauty from their face that came. Says Rashi, Nafal or Babayas Derech Pi Aliyah Shepanem Irais. Shakli Rav Amram Ladarga. So Rav Amram grabbed the ladder. Don't have Yecholin Be'asara Limidalia. That even 10 people couldn't lift up. And Dalia L'chudei. He did it himself. Sulk v'ozl, so he started going up. Kimatu l'pal gadargo, when he got to halfway, ifshach. Says Rashi, Hirchiv upisig raglov, he stopped his feet. Lamad bim kaima b'chazako eskaber yitzroi. So he had this last moment when he stopped in the middle. Rama koila, and he screamed out, Nura be'amram, that there's a fire. And of course there was no fire. And here he was stuck in the middle of this ladder. Also the Rabbanan came to presumably to extinguish this flame. Armalei kasef tinon. You just embarrassed yourself. Like, what are you doing? Obviously everyone knows you grabbed this ladder to go up to be with a woman. And you're this great tzaddik. So on this he says an unbelievable answer. Ormulhu mutav, it's better tichasvu be amram be alma hadain vlo tichasvu minei alma da'asi. Better I be humiliated here in Olam Hazeh and not sin than to allow myself to be a sinful person, and then I'll have the greatest level of busha, of humiliation and embarrassment in the world to come. Unbelievable answer. So Ashbei the Yinpak Mine. Let's find where we are here. Ashre Rav Amram, he made a shvuah with Yetzirah, Sheyetz Mimenu, that the Yetzirah should leave him already. The Yinpak Mine, Nafik Mine. So the Yetzirah Taka left. Ki Amud Nura, like a pillar of fire. Which so Taka was. There was a fire. The fire was in him. Armali Chazi Diat Nura ve'anna Bisra ve'anna Adifni Minach. I am flesh, you are fire, and yet I was able to overpower you. Rameir Havi Misloitzates Ba'over Avera. So Rameir used to kind of look pathetically upon these people that sinned. Yom Echad Idmale Satan Kisasa Bahakis in Nahara. All of a sudden the Yitzhahara, the Satan, which Rashi says is the Yitzhahara, appeared like a woman on the other side of a river. U'havi Mavra, but there was no ability to get to the other side with a ferry. So Nakat Metzra, so he took this like rope, the Ka'avar, and he was going over this body of water to get to this woman. Kimata Palga Metzra, when he got to like halfway, Shavke, the Yitzhahar left him. Amr Ilav Deka machor zeberakia. If it wasn't for the fact that it was announced in the very heavens, his harub rameir b'torasai, guard rameir in his Torah, shavisi ladamach tartimoi. I could have made your worth similar to 2 pennies, to nothing. So even the great Rabbi Meir had the potential to fall. And this is not Lashon Hara. These aren't stories to make fun of tzaddikim. It's to show that we're all vulnerable to this, if we're just honest with ourselves. Rabbi Kiva, which is interesting because Rabbi Kiva himself was someone who was about tshuva, but yet he also looked downly upon a person who didn't have any discipline, and he was a sinner. So the Yetzer Hara looked like a woman on top of a tree. So Nakdila Dikla to Kasolik. He started to try to go up the tree. When he got halfway up there, Shavke, the Yetzer Hara left him, similar to Rameir. Same thing. You've been worthless. So the Yetzer Hara, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is an Oizer. Hashem protects us sometimes from our Yetzer. Playmoi. Havirugla Maimar, he used to say, Kol Yom every day, Gir B'Eini the Satan. That let this be like an arrow in the eye of the Satan. He would provoke the Satan. Yom Echad Mal Yom Kippur Havi. One day was Erev Yom Kippur. Id Milei Ka'anya. The Yetzer Hara appeared like a poor person. Asa Kara Baba, and he was calling on his door. Apikule Rifta. Take out bread. Normally Yoima. Thanks for the bread, but come on. Everyone else is eating inside, enjoying themselves, having a nice meal before Yom Kippur, and you're giving me bread not to eat on the street, on the sidewalk. So he brought him in. The karivule rif to give him bread. Everyone else is sitting at the table, so you're having me eat. Okay, I'm inside, but you're having me sit in the living room. I want to sit in the dining room with everyone else. Sasuya Asbuha Taki, put him on the table so he could eat at the table. Rabbi Yosef Mili Nafshi Shichna Bekive Havi, he was filled with boils and all these unfortunate, terrible physical ailments and disease, which of course was repulsive to anyone who's sitting there trying to eat. He was doing disgusting things. Unfortunately, you bring someone into your house and all of a sudden they're acting totally disrespectful. We continue and pay off on the base. He said, Tiv Shapir, says Rashi, Shave Kahaigen, sit nicely. Behave, have some table manners, a little etiquette. Marmalay, Havali Kasa. Give me a cup so I can dilute and have a cup of wine. So Yomi Kasa, he gave it to him. Ichmar Shadabe Chichai V'Nacharoi Be Shakav Umes. So says Rashi, Hishlech B'Toicho Eschichai Lecha Hayotz V'Nareya. So he spit out from his lungs, which means that the phlegm, which was inside, not just in his mouth, but even the phlegm inside of his lungs, he spit into it, and all of a sudden he appeared as someone who had died. Shamadahavi Kamri Plemo Katal Gavra. So it looked like he looked like he died somehow, maybe from the drink or the food. So and people are starting to say that Polimo killed him. Can you imagine? Polimo was so nice. He invited him into his house. He did everything for him. And all of a sudden he's being accused of being a killer. So Arak, he ran away. Polimo did. Vatasha Nafshi Bebesa Kise. And he hung out in the bathroom, right, to kind of avoid everyone. Ozel Basre, so they went after him. Nafal Kamei, Ki Dechazi Dahavi Mitzdayer, once he saw that he was in great pain, Goli Nashe, they revealed himself. That was really the Yetzer Hara, the Satan. Normally, my time, Ahmed Hachi, why'd you say this? What should I have said? It's basically saying, like, why would you instigate me? I don't like the fact you say that this should be in the eyes of the Satan. So you can speak a little bit nicer to me, and therefore I wouldn't have instigated you and said all this about you. Again, he was hiding, as Rashi says, because he thought that the Naishya Melech Hargai, that maybe people are going to come and kill him. So he was hiding. And then again, eventually, the Satan revealed to him why he did all this, because he didn't like the way he was being spoken about. Rabbi Chia Barashi, Havi Ragol Kol Idan, Davi Nafol Ape. So Rabbi Chia Barashi, he was accustomed all the time, Davi Nafol Ape would fall on his face. Havi Yomra Oimer, who would say, Horachman Yatzilenu Mi Yetzer Hara. May Hashem, may you save me from the Yetzer Hara. Yom Echad, one time, Shmatinu Debesu, his wife overheard him saying this. Amra Michdi, Hakal Mishnei de Parish Leminoi. There's so many years because I'm so old. Rashi says, Machma Zikna, he has no Yetzer Hara. So my time of Karma, he's saying, save me from the potentials of a Yetzer Hara. So Yom Echad Havi Kagaris Beginte. He was learning in the garden. So Kish Nasha, so she adorned herself. Chalfa Vatanya Kimei, and she passed by him. Says Rashi, Avul Lefandav V'Shansa Pam Shniya. She did it a second time. Amr Allah, he said to her, Man at, who are you? Amr Anna Charusa Dahari Miyomi. Says Rashi, Charusa Shem Zaina Nikeres Be'ir. Apparently some type of Zaina. Now apparently he didn't recognize that this was his wife. So Tava, so he requested her services. Amrle, he said to her, Asinihili Lahach Rumana Deresh Susisa. Go get that pomegranate on the top of this tree. Rashi says, Anaf Katan Shagoiva Hadeko. Climb up this palm tree and grab this fruit. So Shavar, he jumped up. Ozol, he went and asked in healing, brought her this fruit. Kiyasala Besi, when he went back to his house, Havika Shagra Debesu Tanura. He was basically about to harm himself by going into the oven. He felt so bad that he had committed this horrible avera of being with his Zaina. Solik v'koyos b'gavei. Again, he sat inside of it. Armalei, my high. So his wife said, what are you doing? Armalei, hachi v'hachi havi maisa. I'm embarrassed to say that I was unfaithful to you, my wife, and I was with a Zaina. Armalei, so she said back to him, don't worry about it. Ana havoy, it was me. It was me. Lo ashkach ba. So he didn't pay attention to her. Until she gave him simanim to show that in fact it was her. So Amr la ana miya la sura ichavni. I still was machavin to do an avera. Even though I didn't end up doing the avera, however, my intention was to do an avera. So therefore I still made a mistake. Kol yomav shel oisat tzaddik. All the days of this great tzaddik of Rav Chia Barashi, Haya Mis'ane, he would fast ad shemes boisa misa till he died with this misa, basically of starvation. Desanya Isha Afarim Hashem Yisachla, the famous sugya, which is in Parshas Matos, that the husband should annul her vows and Hashem will forgive her for making such a vow. So b'makas b'daber b'isha shenadra b'nazir. The woman says, I want to be a Nazir. Shama Bala Beheferla. And the husband annuls it. So she's not a Nazir at all. Vehilo Yada Sheheferla Bala. She has no idea her husband did it. Nonetheless, she started drinking wine. She started doing all the things the Nazir is not supposed to do. But she's not a Nazir. It doesn't make any difference. Still, Hashem Yislach Law. You still have to ask Hashem for forgiveness, even though technically he didn't do anything wrong. Rabbi Kiva ki avi mati lahai psuka avi bachi. When he got to this pasuk, he would cry. Yomi, he said, "Umam mishin eschav loechel basar chazir v'yol b'yod basar taleh amar tar sricha kapara uslicha mishin eschav loechel basar chazir v'yol b'yod basar chazir achas kama v'kama." So if you have a person who wanted to eat non-kosher, and it just happens to be that the food that he ate was kosher, but he really wanted it to be non-kosher, he still has to ask forgiveness, even though he didn't eat treif. So imagine if you actually wanted to eat a cheeseburger from McDonald's and you ended up eating that cheeseburger from McDonald's where you actually did the sin, it's even worse. Similarly, he did not know and he was guilty and the sin will be lifted. Rabbi Kiva cried again, very emotional. V'ola b'yadu chaylev amar Torah v'yadu v'ashem v'nasavaynai shamish eschav lecha chaylev v'ola b'yadu chaylev v'achs kama v'kama. So there's chaylev, which is non-kosher fats, and shamin, which is kosher fats. I wanted to eat the non-kosher fat, but it happened to be when I ate the fats, it was kosher. It's still an avera. It's a sin. It's still a guilt. So someone who wanted to eat the non-kosher fats, and taka, it was chaylev, then certainly is a problem. Isa ben Yehuda Omer, to Isa ben Yehuda said, V'lo yadav Hashem v'nasa v'ayno al davar zeh yidoi kol hadoyivim. Says Rashi, Kol Adayvim, all the worry. Sheish Lahem Leiv Lidvois Yidvo Al Zeh. You should worry. Shein V'schavin V'eish Kan Nesios Avoin. But nonetheless, there's still Nesios Avoin. Okay. Let's get to the next two dots. Misyachad Adam im imoy. A person is misyachad, can be misyachad with his mother. Rabbi Yehuda Rav Asi misyachad Adam im achayso, with his sister. V'darim imoy, he can live with his mother. V'imbito, and his daughter. Ki Yomer Kamei de Shmuel Omer also Sachadim Kol Reish B'Tar V'Fil Im Behema. He says, no, you're not allowed to be misyachid with any of the Urias in the Torah, even an animal, which probably difficult to live such a type of a life, but that's what he said. Okay, it's not misyachid Adam Im Ima V'Im B'Toi V'Yashim Him B'Kir Basar. So you have to do Shmuel. L'Chayra, Shmuel is a refutation. We see B'Ferish in the Mishnah that you're allowed to do it. So how can he say it's usher? So Amach Shmuel, according to your reasoning, Hadisanya Chayso B'Chamoiso Sharko Reish B'Torah Ein Misyachid Imahen El Be'edim. It says when it comes to these people, you can only be misyachid if there's witnesses. Be'edim and Shalo Be'edim Loi El Tanaihi. It's actually Machlokas Tanoim. It's not so pashut, it's mutter. Even though our Mishnah says it's mutter, there's Tanoim that disagree. The Sanya Amr Meir, his haru be nebiti. I need to be careful from my daughter, which means that he would not even have yichud with his own daughter. L'chayra. Rab Tarfin. So Rab Tarfin says Rashi, Anshi Beso, the people in his house, the following: his harubi b'nei kalati. Be careful with me and my daughter-in-law. So legally, love oiso Talmud. So a student started laughing at Rabbi Tarfin, like, what's going on over here? It's your daughter-in-law. Rabbi Avoy b'shum Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel lo hayom mu'atim ad shenichshel oiso Talmud b'chamoisai. It wasn't too long until that Talmud, who thought it was a joke, Rav Tarfin was strict, they ended up being intimate with his own mother-in-law. Afil im behema. Shmuel says even with an animal. Abaye machale mekula dabra. Says Rashi, Kishar hoylech basada begirsa, when he would go to the fields to learn Torah, he he would like hold back all the animals from being in the field. Basically, he wouldn't either that. Okay, that's one shot in Rashi. So again, he basically didn't want any of the animals around with his Lord. Rav Sheshes Ma'aver Le Metzra. So he had some type of separation. Rav Chanan ben Arda Iklo Rav Kahana Upum Nahara. He went to Rav Kahana in this place. Chazid Yosef V'Kagaris. He was learning Torah. V'Kaima Behema Kamein. There was an animal right next to him. Sharmalei Osebel Omar feeling Behema. What are you doing? There's an animal over here. You should be learning Torah next to an animal. Sharmalei Lava Datoi. Which, what that means maybe is I didn't know the halacha, or I didn't realize that the animal was, I wasn't paying attention, the animal was there. A person could have yichud with two yavamos. That is acceptable. The im shnei shtei tsarais, and two co-wives, im isha v'chamoisa, as well as his wife and his mother-in-law, im ishu bas baila, with your wife and your husband's daughter, im isha v'tinaikes, shioidas tambia, as long as that tinaikes understands that tambia, as Rashi's claimer mahi bia, what is bia, then moseres atzma bia. But even though they have not yet, because they're so small, they may not necessarily know they may not necessarily bring themselves to bia yet, but they do know what it is. So that's already somewhat enough to be able to safeguard you from the potentials of sin. Okay, we're going to stop here, but let's see, probably a whole bunch of questions. Starting off with question 5 on the previous Amud. These are times that we said we are not chayish in because of yichud. So one of them, which is the famous one, is Bala Be'ir, if the husband is in the city. Furthermore, if Pesach Pasuach or Shus Harabim, then also we are not concerned of yichud. Question, fine, that's the only question actually on this daf, surprisingly. TA 18, Ha'im Malkin al Hayichud. Do we give Malkus because of yichud? I got it completely wrong. I'm not sure why. But on Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, which we saw, but Penuya, because this is what it's talking about. It's when it comes to a Penuya, let's find it. What we said, we give Malkus on yichud. But the truth is, lo more an el b'yichud Penuya. Of a b'yichud eishes ish loy. Shlotehei moitzalaz al boneha. Or maybe we will be malkinu machriz. That is questionable if in fact that is acceptable. If you could be malkinu machriz, you could announce the reason why this person is getting malchus is not because they had bia, but because it was only yichud. Okay. TB 19. Bekama nashim ksherim mutter hayichud im ha'isha. Seems like a Beferish Mishnah. Shtei nashim ksherim b'isha echad mutter avol shtei nashim aser b'isha echad v'gam im ha'ish marugel etzel nashim kamei b'malacha shaloi shehu tamid bein nashim afil im nashim har b'isha dayin iser yichud. Consider the difference between ksherim and prutzim. Adkan.